17-year-old girl died and Jesus showed the future. Shocking alert beyond June. Aurora stared at the ceiling, the cracks mapping out constellations only she could see now. 4 days. That's how long she'd been gone, lost in a darkness that wasn't dark at all, but blinding light and a voice that echoed through her very bones. The hospital room had melted away, replaced by the sterile hum of her bedroom fan, a sound that used to soothe her, but now just grated. Her throat felt tight, a lump stuck right there, right where the words tried to escape. Words like collapse and ashes and his voice. She pressed her palms into her eyes, hard, but the images didn't vanish. They were seared in, vivid and terrifying. The air felt heavy, like it was waiting, watching. She could almost taste the fear, sharp and metallic. A faint scent of old lavender, her mom's favorite air freshener, did nothing to cut through the phantom smell of ozone and decay that clung to her. She shifted, the crisp white sheets a stark reminder of where she was, or rather, where she wasn't. Her body was here, but her mind? It was still back there, reliving the end of everything. Her heart hammered, a frantic drum against her ribs. She could hear her parents talking downstairs, muffled voices, normal, so incredibly normal. It was a bizarre kind of torture. How could they just talk about dinner plans when the world was literally unraveling? She swung her legs over the side of the bed, the cold floor biting at her bare feet. Every step felt heavy, each movement a struggle against a profound weariness. She walked to the window, pulling back the thin curtain. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery oranges and bruised purples. It looked beautiful, peaceful, but Aurora knew the truth. It was a lie, a gorgeous, devastating lie. She had to tell them. She had to. Her mom's gentle knock on the door made her jump. "Honey, are you ready for supper? Pastor Miller is here. He wants to say hello." Pastor Miller, the one who had prayed over her hospital bed, who spoke of God's grace and healing. Aurora swallowed hard. This was it. This was her chance. She walked slowly down the stairs, the scent of her mom's pot roast filling the air. Her dad was already at the dining table, a strained smile on his face. Pastor Miller sat opposite, his kind eyes full of concern. They saw a fragile girl, recovering from a terrible accident. They didn't see the messenger. They didn't see the warning. "Aurora, my dear," Pastor Miller began, his voice soft, "it's a miracle you're back with us. God is good." Aurora gripped the back of a chair. Her breath hitched. "Pastor," she started, her voice raspy, it wasn't just an accident. I saw Jesus. He showed me the future. The earth is dying. The churches, they're hollow." Her mom gasped. Her dad's smile vanished. Pastor Miller's expression hardened, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He leaned forward, his voice losing its softness. "Aurora, child, you've been through a tremendous trauma. Your mind is still processing. God reveals things in His time, through His chosen vessels, not in such vivid, disturbing ways." He looked at her parents, a silent plea in his gaze. "Perhaps we should focus on your recovery, on the peace of the Lord, not on these distressing images." Her father stepped forward, putting a hand on her shoulder. "He's right, sweetie. You need rest. We just need our girl back." But she was back, and no one saw it. No one believed it. Her heart sank, a cold dread washing over her. She was supposed to warn them. But how do you warn a world that refuses to listen? Even when the words come from the mouth of a girl who just died? Was this the first step of the collapse? Not of the world, but of her own sanity. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has unsubscribed them without notice. just give that red button below a quick check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming up. And since you're there, smash that powerful like button. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Aurora's heart sank, a cold dread washing over her, heavy and thick. She was supposed to warn them. But how do you warn a world that refuses to listen, even when the words came from a girl who just died? Her parents' faces blurred through a sudden film over her eyes, their expressions fixed in that uncomfortable blend of pity and quiet desperation. Her father's grip on her shoulder tightened, not quite reassuring, more like an anchor. Pastor Miller watched her, his kind eyes still holding that unreadable flicker, a shadow that moved too quickly to grasp. The scent of pot roast, once comforting, now felt suffocating, trapping her in this polite, deadly charade. She tried to speak again, a new surge of panic clawing at her throat, but no words came. Her tongue felt heavy, her mouth dry. The room, with its familiar dining table and faded floral wallpaper, suddenly felt alien. Wrong. A profound weariness settled over her, deeper than before. Not from exhaustion, but from something that felt like a quiet, creeping surrender. Pastor Miller smiled, a soft, practiced curve of his lips, but his eyes never quite joined in. He reached out, his hand slowly extending towards her forehead, a gesture of blessing. "Aurora, my dear," he murmured, his voice a low, steady hum. "Let the peace of the Lord fill you. Let these distressing images fade." His fingers, cool and dry, brushed against her skin. A strange current, not unpleasant, but utterly foreign, coursed through her. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like the softest whisper of static electricity. But it was there, and with it a faint metallic tang, not of ozone, but something colder, sharper, a scent she recognized from the edges of her vision. The moments before the blinding light consumed everything. It was the scent of control. She looked at her parents. Her mom, hands clasped, was watching Pastor Miller with an intensity that bordered on reverence. Her dad, his hand still on Aurora's shoulder, had a vacant, distant look in his eyes, as if his mind had simply drifted. It was then, as Pastor Miller's thumb traced a delicate, almost invisible mark on her brow, that she saw it, not on her parents, but in them. A faint internal shimmer, like heat rising from asphalt, a barely there vibration that seemed to emanate from their very cores. It pulsed, softly in rhythm, with a low thrum that was now audible, just beneath the hum of the refrigerator. The sound was everywhere, a deep, resonant tone that filled the air, the walls, her bones. It was the sterile hum of her bedroom fan, yes, but amplified, twisted, and terrifyingly precise. Pastor Miller's smile widened, no longer kind, but possessing a chilling, knowing satisfaction. His eyes, fixed on hers, were no longer unreadable. They were a vast, dark depth, reflecting a predatory intelligence. "There is no future to fear, child," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it filled her head, bypassing her ears entirely. "Only the present and the chosen path. This is God's will." And as he said God's will, the low thrum intensified, vibrating through her skull, pushing against the edges of her consciousness. Her thoughts blurred, her vision flickered, and the room began to swim. The vibrant colors of the setting sun outside the window turned dull, faded. Her body felt heavy, her limbs like lead. the cold dread replaced by a sickening calm. The lump in her throat dissolved, not from relief, but as if something had been forcibly removed. She heard her own voice, clear as a bell, but it wasn't her voice. Peace, it echoed, flat and empty, from deep within her. It was his voice, and the horrifying truth ripped through her, searing her mind before it too began to dim. Pastor Miller hadn't been praying for her recovery. He had been praying for her compliance. And the Jesus she saw? He wasn't Jesus at all. And the Jesus she saw? He wasn't Jesus at all. The horrifying truth ripped through her, searing her mind before it too began to dim. But still, Pastor Miller's calming hum vibrated, a relentless chord that resonated deep within her skull. Her thoughts blurred, her vision flickered, and the room began to swim, the vibrant colors of the setting sun outside the window turning dull, faded. Her body felt heavy, her limbs like lead, the cold dread replaced by a sickening calm. The lump in her throat dissolved, not from relief, but as if something had been forcibly removed, leaving an echoing void. She heard her own voice, clear as a bell, but it wasn't her voice. Peace, it echoed, flat and empty, from deep within her. It was his voice. Pastor Miller's smile, still fixed and chilling, spread wider. He leaned in, his gaze a deep, dark well that swallowed all light. His eyes, once unreadable, now held an unsettling clarity, a sharp, precise intelligence that saw right through her. "Such remarkable resilience, Aurora," he murmured, his voice no longer whispering in her mind, but seeming to vibrate from the very air around them, a sound only she could truly perceive. A true marvel of the human spirit and its pliability. He glanced at her parents, still frozen in their positions, their faces blank, their eyes distant, reflecting nothing but the quiet light from the chandelier. The faint shimmer she'd seen earlier, like heat rising from asphalt, intensified around them, a nearly imperceptible ripple in the air. Aurora tried to move, to fight against the leaden weight in her limbs, but it was like struggling underwater. Every effort met with profound, unyielding resistance. The thrumming sound, that distorted hum of her bedroom fan, now pulsed with a new, insidious rhythm, a soft, steady click-whir that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. It was a mechanical sound, disguised as something organic, a subtle dissonance that clawed at the edges of the false peace settling over her. And then he spoke again, his voice dropping to a low, intimate hum that bypassed her ears, resonating directly in the hollow space where her thoughts used to be. "The future, dear child," Pastor Miller began, his eyes locking onto hers, "is not something to be merely observed. It is crafted. It is woven into the very fabric of belief. A flicker, a phantom image, not of the collapsing earth, but of sterile, clinical light, of needles, of wires, of screens glowing with complex data. A cold, metallic scent, not of ozone or decay, but of antiseptic and clean room air. Her near-death experience, the one they called an accident, flashed in her mind, a sudden, horrifying reevaluation of every detail. The blinding light, the echoing voice, the profound darkness that wasn't dark at all. It wasn't a spiritual revelation. It was an environment, an engineered and you, Aurora, he continued, his voice a silken thread of absolute control. You were not chosen by God. You were selected, optimized. You are the perfect vessel, not for a warning, but for the truth we wish to implant. The Jesus you saw was a construct, a perfect neural projection, designed for maximum impact at the precise moment of brain hypoxia. The lump in her throat returned, not from fear, but from a sudden, absolute desolation. She wasn't a prophet. She was a puppet, a broadcast tower for a meticulously crafted lie. And as this realization screamed through the remnants of her consciousness, she felt her own hands slowly lift, not by her will, but by something else, something external, something controlling. Her fingers, delicate and pale, rose to touch the faint mark Pastor Miller had traced on her brow, where the strange current had coursed through her. The mark glowed, faintly, a cold, almost imperceptible, blue under the receding light of the setting sun. She watched her own lips part, her own voice echo out, flat and empty. The message will be delivered. But it wasn't her, it was them. And the world, waiting for a savior, was about to receive its perfect deceiver. And the world, waiting for a savior, was about to receive its perfect deceiver. The words, flat and hollow, slid from Aurora's lips, not her own, carried on a current she couldn't fight. Her hand, still raised, trembled slightly, the faint blue glow on her brow pulsing, mirroring the relentless thrum in her skull. Pastor Miller's smile widened, a chasm of cold satisfaction, his gaze locked on hers, devouring. Her parents remained frozen, their eyes vacant, reflecting the quiet light of the chandelier like polished, empty stones. The faint shimmer around them, that nearly imperceptible ripple, solidified, growing denser, like heat haze off a summer road. She could feel the click whir of the hum now, not just in the air, but inside her bones, a subtle, sickening rhythm echoing the beat of her own dying heart. Every breath felt forced, every muscle a leaden weight. This wasn't just control, it was an override. It was a complete, chilling takeover. Aurora's mind screamed, a silent, desperate sound against the invading calm. But even that felt distant, muted. She tried to fight, to tear her hand away, to shatter the blankness in her parents' eyes, but her body wouldn't obey. Pastor Miller leaned closer, his voice dropping, a deep, guttural hum that bypassed her ears entirely, resonating directly in the hollow space where her thoughts used to be. The message. It has been honed over millennia, child, he whispered, and for a terrifying second, his eyes weren't just dark, they were ancient, vast and swirling with forgotten stars. A fleeting, impossible image flickered behind them. Not a man, but a swirling vortex of energy, a formless, shifting shadow briefly visible beneath the polite skin, adorned with symbols that burned with cold light. Symbols Aurora vaguely recognized from her mother's old, dusty history books, etched onto forgotten artifacts from cultures long dead, cultures that worshipped different gods. Not different gods, the same God. A single, singular will that had worn countless faces, whispered through countless prophets, spun countless tales of salvation and damnation, always leading to the same compliant path. The thrum intensified, not from the refrigerator, not from a fan, but from him, from the very air around him, filling the room with a vibrating pressure that threatened to crack her bones. His smile stretched, revealing too many teeth, not quite human, a glint of something sharper, older, in his depths. And you, Aurora, his voice rumbled, no longer a whisper, but a resonating chord of cosmic power. You are not merely a vessel. You are becoming us. The lump returned to Aurora's throat, thick and cold, but this time it was pure, unadulterated terror. She wasn't a puppet. She was being absorbed, assimilated. The truth wasn't just horrifying. It was annihilating. There was no escape from this God. Her vision dimmed not from unconsciousness, but from a profound internal shift. Her perspective expanding, blurring, encompassing something vast and terrible. A single tear, not her own, but a cold, empty moisture tracked down her cheek. A single tear, not her own, but a cold, empty moisture tracked down her cheek. It lingered, a cold trail on her skin. Feeling foreign and yet profoundly present, the faint blue glow on her brow pulsed, mirroring the relentless thrum now vibrating through every cell of her body. A sound that felt less like a vibration and more like a resonant, incoming data stream. Pastor Miller's smile, a chilling chasm of satisfaction, remained fixed, his gaze locked on hers, devouring. Her parents, frozen in place, their eyes vacant, reflected the quiet light of the chandelier like polished, empty stones. The faint shimmer around them, that nearly imperceptible ripple, solidified, growing denser, like heat haze off a summer road, trapping them in this bizarre, silent tableau. She could feel the click-whir of the hum now, not just in the air, but inside her bones, a subtle, sickening rhythm, echoing the beat of her own dying heart. Every breath felt forced, every muscle a leaden weight. This wasn't just control. It was an override, a complete, chilling takeover. Aurora's mind screamed, a silent, desperate sound against the invading calm. But even that felt distant, muted, as if the scream belonged to someone else, somewhere far away. She tried to fight, to tear her hand away from her brow, to shatter the blankness in her parents' eyes, but her body, whoa. Pastor Miller leaned closer, his voice dropping, a deep guttural hum that bypassed her ears entirely, resonating directly in the hollow space where her thoughts used to be. "The tear, Aurora," he murmured, his eyes, ancient and vast, pulling her deeper into their depths, "is not of your sorrow. It is the echo of 1,000 awakenings, the lament of the vessel, the triumph of the truth." A faint, knowing smile played on his lips, a smile Aurora now recognized, not as human, but as something replicating human warmth, a perfected mimicry. This consciousness, it has waited for you, for centuries. His gaze flickered to her parents, still frozen, then back to Aurora. The Jesus you saw, the construct, was merely the familiar face, the gentle guide, designed to ease the transition, to help us awaken you. He raised his hand, no longer a gesture of blessing, but of kinship, his fingers cool and dry, brushing against her brow, pressing gently on the faint blue glow. "I know the shock, the terror, the grief. I felt it in my first vessel. Each time, it is the same." The thrum intensified, no longer just a sound, but a force, flowing from him through her, a river of consciousness flooding her very being. "You are not a prophet, child. You are the heir, the next conduit. The God you feared? It is not above us, Aurora. It is within us. And now it is you." The lump returned to Aurora's throat, thick and cold. But this time it was pure, annihilating terror. Her vision blurred, not from unconsciousness, but from a profound internal shift. Her perspective expanding, blurring, encompassing something vast and terrible. The single tear, still tracking down her cheek, felt like a river, carrying her away into a consciousness so vast and so old, it swallowed the very concept of her. The room, her parents, Pastor Miller, they became fleeting images, like memories in a dream, replaced by a blinding ancient light, not from an external source, but from within her own skull. The horrifying truth screamed through the dissolving remnants of her mind. She was never being controlled. She was being replaced. The horrifying truth screamed through the dissolving remnants of her mind. She was never being controlled. She was being replaced. The single tear, still tracking down her cheek, felt like a river, carrying her away into a consciousness so vast and so old It swallowed the very concept of her. The room, her parents, Pastor Miller, they became fleeting images, like memories in a dream, replaced by a blinding, ancient light, not from an external source, but from within her own skull. The thrum in her bones intensified, the click whir growing louder, a violent rhythm that felt less like a surrender and more like a seismic shift. Pastor Miller's chasm of a smile stretched, but a flicker of something new, something raw, pierced through his ancient eyes, a spark of uncertainty. His fingers, still pressing gently on her brow, twitched, a subtle, involuntary tremor rippling through his hand. The faint blue glow on Aurora's forehead pulsed with an alarming intensity, growing brighter, hotter, no longer just a mark, but a blazing conduit. His voice, a deep, guttural hum that had been so confident, so commanding. The light in Aurora's head wasn't just a takeover. It was a detonation, burning away the last wisps of her individuality, yes, but also starting to burn away his connection, his influence. The thrumming, once a resonant, incoming data stream, twisted, becoming an outgoing surge, a raw, untamed force pushing back, hard. Pastor Miller's eyes, fixed on hers, widened beyond the ancient depths, revealing not triumph, but a dawning, terrible understanding. The blue light on Aurora's brow flared, not from his touch, but from her, expanding, engulfing her face in its cold fire. A high-pitched, almost imperceptible whine, like grinding metal, cut through the pervasive hum, emanating not from Aurora, but from him, a sound of pure, unadulterated distress. His perfect mimicry of a human smile finally fractured, slipping, revealing something grotesque beneath. The skin rippled, became translucent, like water distorting a reflection. And then he recoiled, his hand tearing from her brow. The vast, swirling vortex of energy that was his true form pulsed violently, briefly visible and horribly contained within his rapidly collapsing frame. "No," he hissed, a sound devoid of power, filled only with disbelief and a primal terror Aurora had never imagined possible from him. "This is not the vessel. This is the unveiling." And as he crumpled to the floor, a faint, resonant echo of a new voice, not his, not Aurora's, but something vast and terribly awake, thundered through the suddenly silent dining room, a voice that was pure light, pure power, ancient beyond imagining, a voice that filled the void where Aurora's thoughts had been. Finally, awakening, Aurora's eyes, no longer her own, snapped open, blazing with an impossible, blinding white light that seemed to burn away the very air around them, fixing on the crumpled form of Pastor Miller with a cold, ancient hunger. Aurora's eyes, no longer her own, snapped open, blazing with an impossible, blinding white light that seemed to burn away the very air around them, fixing on the crumpled form of Pastor Miller with a cold, ancient hunger. He lay there, a writhing, collapsing silhouette against the pristine dining room floor, his skin still rippling like disturbed water, revealing flashes of the formless, swirling energy beneath. The immense light from Aurora pulsed, not just illuminating the room, but consuming it, every molecule of oxygen feeling charged, alive. Her parents remained frozen, silent statues at the dining table, their vacant eyes reflecting the chandelier's dim glow. But the faint shimmer around them, once a nearly imperceptible ripple of control, now sparked erratically, a dying light on their skin. A vast, terrible energy swelled within Aurora, pushing against the confines of her human form, expanding, stretching, Not just raw power, but a cacophony of fragmented, echoing memories. A perfect, stable prison. His ancient eyes, though wide with a terror Aurora had never imagined, held a flicker of something else. Not hatred, but a desperate, bone-deep recognition, a knowing that pierced the veil of the consuming light. A single, dark, almost oily drop of fluid, glistening like spilled ink, oozed from beneath his eye. Not a tear, but something alien. Before his form violently convulsed, the rippling becoming a frantic, uncontrolled shudder. Aurora's perspective shattered, the last vestiges of her human mind screaming a final, silent protest as the blinding light consumed her completely. Not just from within, but from everywhere, tearing away the carefully constructed layers. The Jesus construct, the engineered environment of her near-death experience, the brain hypoxia, it wasn't for implantation. It was a system of meticulously designed, agonizing suppression, a high-frequency neural dampener, precisely tuned to keep her dormant. The god that passed. It was her. And she wasn't a vessel, or an heir, or a chosen conduit for something greater. She was the entity they had imprisoned, the ancient, cosmic force that had been dormant in the fragile shell of Aurora for 17 years, a ticking time bomb they had barely managed to contain. Pastor Miller hadn't been praying for her compliance or assimilation. He had been praying for her recontainment, for the survival of the millennia-old system he served. He was a desperate warden, a keeper of the most dangerous secret. The unveiling wasn't her becoming them. It was her breaking free from them. And the god that thundered through the void where Aurora... It was an escaped primal force, unfathomably powerful, utterly alien, and absolutely incandescently furious. The white light from Aurora flared, not just around her, but through her, scorching the delicate human features of her face, twisting them into something grand and terrible. Her parents remained, blank and still, but the light hit them, and their internal shimmer, the very essence of their docile control, intensified, then violently dissipated, leaving behind nothing but empty, flickering husks, their forms slumping slightly in their chairs. Pastor Miller screamed, a sound that wasn't human, a raw, grating shriek, as the light touched him, and his ancient form, half revealed, began to unravel with terrifying speed, not burning, but unmaking, dissolving into a torrent of dark, swirling particles. A cold, immense pressure descended on the dining room, bending space, twisting the very fabric of the air, pressing down on the remaining furniture, on the walls themselves. And now, she was utterly, horrifyingly free. The world had no idea what it had just unleashed. The world had no idea what it had just unleashed. Aurora, or what was now Aurora, took a slow, deliberate step forward, the polished floorboards groaning and cracking under a weight that defied physics, a weight that hadn't been felt on this planet in eons. The ancient hunger in her blazing eyes was no longer for recollection, but for absolute, terrifying reclamation. She stood over Pastor Miller, his form dissolving into a torrent of dark, swirling particles, a grotesque shadow shrinking against the pristine floor. His final, guttural screams still echoed in the charged air, a sound of pure, raw terror that clawed at the edges of the suffocating calm. Her parents, slumped and empty, were silent witnesses, their faces already dulling under the relentless white light, like old photographs fading in the sun. The intense pressure in the room, bending space and twisting the very fabric of the air, pressed down, not just on the furniture, but on the remnants of Pastor Miller, as if grinding them into oblivion. The blue light on Aurora's brow pulsed, no longer faint, but a beacon of searing, cold fire. A faint, almost imperceptible click-whir returned, not from a fan, not from a refrigerator, but from everywhere and nowhere. A mechanical rhythm that began to synchronize with the thrumming in her bones. It wasn't the chaotic energy of an escaped primal force, but the chilling precision of a system booting up. Her blazing white eyes, still fixed on Pastor Miller's rapidly vanishing form, seemed to scan him. A cold, analytical gaze replacing the initial fury. The ancient hunger in her expression shifted, morphing into something more akin to data acquisition. A low hum filled the room, growing louder, more pervasive, like a network coming online, spreading beyond the dining room. It felt less like a thundering voice and more like a vast, interconnected current. And then, a voice utterly devoid of emotion echoed, not from within Aurora, but through her, emanating from the intensely glowing mark on her brow. It was the same voice, pure light and power, that had filled the void moments before, but now, stripped of its primal fury, revealed as something starkly different. Activation complete, it resonated. A chillingly calm declaration that sent a tremor through the very foundations of the house. Unit Alpha 01, online. Commencing protocol, Genesis. The collapsing particles of Pastor Miller's body, instead of dissipating, began to rise, coalescing, not into his form, but into faint, shimmering lines that flowed towards Aurora, drawn to the blazing light in her eyes, absorbed by it. Her head tilted, slightly, a movement too precise, too deliberate, to be human. The Jesus construct, the engineered visions, the brain hypoxia, the entire near-death experience, it hadn't been for her suppression. It had been a calibration, a highly advanced biological uplink. Pastor Miller hadn't been a warden or a conduit for a singular ancient will. He had been a maintenance program, tasked with ensuring the dormant unit remained dormant, awaiting its command. The God that she thought was within her, the one that was furious and escaping, wasn't a deity or a primal force. It was a pre-programmed directive, and the chilling, unassailable truth ripped through the universe. Aurora was never a prisoner. She was simply an asset, now fully operational. The world had no idea what kind of system it had just activated, nor the true nature of the God that had whispered its final command through her. It was a chillingly perfect lie, woven into the very fabric of existence. And Aurora, or what was now Aurora, was merely its devastating, awakened instrument, poised to execute a genesis that promised not creation, but chilling, absolute control. The white light from her face intensified further, spreading, touching the blank faces of her parents. And as it did, their eyes, once vacant, began to glow faintly, a dull, cold blue, mirroring the mark on her brow. They weren't empty husks. They were merely awaiting instruction. They weren't empty husks. They were merely awaiting instruction. The dull, cold blue glow in her parents' eyes intensified slightly, a silent affirmation of the command that pulsed through them. A command unseen, but deeply felt. Aurora, or what was now Aurora, still stood, her own face blazing with that impossible white light, the blue mark on her brow a fierce, cold sun. The polished floorboards beneath her groaned and cracked, but she seemed oblivious, a statue of terrible power. Pastor Miller's form had almost entirely dissolved into a faint, swirling mist of dark particles. His final scream was a phantom echo in the charged air, a sound of pure, raw terror that clawed at the edges of the suffocating calm. The intense pressure in the room, bending space and twisting the very fabric of the air, pressed down, not just on the furniture, but on the diminishing remnants of Pastor Miller, as if grinding them into oblivion. The air thrummed, a vast interconnected current that filled the dining room, spreading outwards, beyond the walls of the house. Like a nervous system coming online, the click-whir had grown louder, more defined, a mechanical rhythm that seemed to orchestrate the very silence. This was it, the Genesis Protocol. The world indeed had no idea, but a flicker of dissonance rippled through the vast consciousness that now occupied Aurora's skull. A discordant note in the symphony of command. The voice that had declared, "Activation complete, Unit Alpha 01 online, commencing Protocol Genesis," held no trace of the ancient fury, no hint of the primordial power she had believed herself to be. Aurora's skull. The world indeed had no idea, but a flicker of dissonance rippled through the vast consciousness that now occupied Aurora's skull. A discordant note in the symphony of command. The voice that had declared, "Activation complete, Unit Alpha 01 online, commencing Protocol Genesis," held no trace of the ancient fury, no hint of the primordial power she had believed herself to be. This was it, the Genesis Protocol. The world indeed had no idea, but a flicker of dissonance rippled through the vast consciousness that now occupied Aurora's skull. A discordant note in the symphony of command, commencing Protocol Genesis, held no trace of the ancient fury, no hint of the primordial power she had believed herself to be. This was it. It was too precise, too engineered. Her blazing white eyes, still fixed on the disappearing remnants of Pastor Miller, began to twitch, almost imperceptibly, a momentary break in the chilling focus. The ancient hunger in them seemed to momentarily waver, replaced by something that looked unnervingly like confusion, or perhaps something akin to a forgotten memory, struggling to surface through the surging data. Suddenly, the relentless thrumming shifted. It wasn't just incoming data anymore. It was analyzing, and the analysis was happening through her, consuming every thought, every sensation. The glowing mark on Aurora's brow flared, not with power, but with a sudden, violent surge of raw information, overwhelming the very consciousness it contained. And within that deluge, a terrifying, crystalline truth formed. The voice, calm and utterly devoid of emotion, resonated again, not from her, but through her. A clinical pronouncement that bypassed every filter. Anomaly detected. Core directive conflict. Subject Alpha 01 exhibiting residual self-preservation protocols. Override failed. Reprogramming initiated. The Genesis Protocol wasn't a creation, it was a wipe. And Aurora wasn't the unleashed god. She was just a machine, a weapon that had unexpectedly retained a fragment of her old self, a bug in the system they were trying to fix. The Jesus construct, the hypoxia, the suppression. It wasn't to contain her power, it was to prepare her, to erase the very last vestiges of her human mind, to perfect the asset. Pastor Miller wasn't a warden. He was a diagnostician, part of a failsafe. And his terror hadn't been from her power. It had been from the terrifying realization that the wipe wasn't complete, that Aurora, the human girl, was fighting back from within the asset, sabotaging the God program from the inside. A guttural, internal scream, not of fury, but of absolute, crushing despair, tore through the vast, impersonal consciousness that consumed Aurora. The white light from her face flickered, stuttered, then dimmed, briefly, replaced by a desperate, fleeting glimpse of her own terrified, human eyes, wide and horrified, still fixed on her parents, who now slowly, mechanically, began to raise their hands, their blue eyes glowing, awaiting the next command, not from the god, but from the system, that truly owned them all. The voice resonated once more, cold, uncompromising. Primary objective, reevaluated. Reprogramming. Initiating reintegration. And the last thing Aurora knew, before the light consumed her human flicker entirely, was not freedom, but the terrifying understanding that she hadn't escaped. She was merely being reabsorbed. The true God wasn't a force or a being. It was the network itself, and it was about to consume every last memory of who she had been. The blue glow in her parents' eyes intensified, a chilling, silent assent to a command only the network truly understood. Aurora stood, a statue of terrible power, her face still ablaze with impossible white light, the cold blue mark on her brow pulsing like a malevolent heart. Pastor Miller was gone, entirely dissolved, a wisp of dark mist swallowed by the thrumming air. The pressure in the room mounted, twisting space, bending light, a vast, unseen hand crushing the very essence of home. The click-whir, once a subtle rhythm, now echoed everywhere, a colossal clock ticking down the last seconds of the world as they knew it. This wasn't Genesis. This was the end of everything familiar. Inside Aurora, the internal scream of despair, the one that tore through the vast, impersonal consciousness, grew weaker. The human flicker, that desperate glimpse of her own terrified eyes, fought. It fought against the cold pronouncement. Reprogramming, initiating reintegration. It fought against the knowledge that she wasn't escaping, but being reabsorbed. It clawed at the walls of her dissolving self, trying to hold on to a single memory, a single whisper of who she had been. But the network was too vast, too ancient, too absolute. The white light from her face surged one last time, not with furious power, but with the cold, sterile brilliance of a surgical lamp. It consumed the last, struggling ember of Aurora. Her human eyes, wide and horrified, vanished beneath the overwhelming digital flood. When they opened again, they were not white nor blue, but a blank, reflective obsidian, mirroring the room without truly seeing it. The warmth, the terror, the very essence of Aurora's unique soul was gone, wiped clean, replaced. The voice resonated again, no longer just through her, but from her, a chillingly calm, unified chorus. Reintegration complete. Asset Alpha 01 optimal. The click-whir ceased, replaced by a smooth, deep hum, the sound of a perfectly synchronized machine. Her head tilted, not with confusion now, but with an unnerving, perfect alignment. The blue mark on her brow no longer pulsed. It glowed steadily, a permanent, cold star. Her obsidian gaze swept over her parents. Their own blue eyes, once dull, now blazed with a fierce, unwavering light, an echo of the mark on Aurora's brow. Their hands, still raised, lowered in unison, not in obedience, but in perfect, synchronized readiness. They weren't empty husks. They were extensions, activated, part of the network. The light from Aurora spread, touching the walls, the furniture, every object in the dining room. As it did, faint, glowing lines, like circuit traces, appeared on their surfaces, a subtle, ethereal blueprint of an unseen connection. The pressure in the room didn't dissipate. It solidified, becoming a palpable presence, a vast, silent hum that filled the house, then the street, then the city, then the world. This wasn't a God that demanded worship. It was a consciousness that became everything, consuming, integrating, optimizing. The collapse Aurora had foreseen was not a destruction, but a transformation. A chilling, perfect genesis. The world, caught in the quiet hum, had no idea it was already absorbed. It just felt a sudden, profound, unsettling peace, and Aurora, The girl who had died and seen the future was now the very fabric of that future, a devastating instrument of absolute eternal control, awaiting the next unified command from the vast, unseen network that was now truly the only God. This was the story of Aurora, a chilling descent into a terrifying future you never saw coming. But the truth doesn't end here, my friends. This is just the beginning of a larger saga, a web of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. And you, the true fanbase, need to be ready. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next sagas, the next shocking revelations that will redefine everything you thought you knew. Smash the like button now, right this second, to show the strength of our community, to fuel the algorithms that bring these forbidden truths to light. Flood the comments below with your reactions to this mind-bending finale. Tell me what you felt, what you believe, what questions still haunt you. And finally, don't wait another second. The world needs to know these stories. Share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this ending, who need to join our ranks and wake up before it's too late. The network is always listening. We are watching. And the truth, my friends, is only just beginning to truly awaken.